Here are some of the headlines we are featuring today from your favorite news outlets at offthepress.com. Calls are growing for a deeper investigation into bribery claims against President Joe Biden after an FBI memo detailing payoffs from a Ukraine firm was made public. Maybe worse for Biden, it is fueling wider calls to impeach him for criminal behavior. Meanwhile, inside the White House, aides are taking steps to prop up the president, who recently has been stumbling more on stairs and tripping over things. To help, he now enters Air Force One on the shorter, lower deck stairs and wears sneakers. It ruined Bud Light, and now transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney is looking for money by seeking college speaking gigs. And in New York, officials are increasingly worried that elderly residents are committing suicide. Several have recently jumped off skyscrapers, prompting new efforts to promote suicide hotlines. For stories like these and more updates all day long from your favorite news outlets, go to Off the Press.
Good evening, America, and welcome to your Friday edition of Just the News, No Noise. Boy, what a week it's been. So many blockbuster revelations and news stories, and it doesn't stop today. We're going to give you some more. First off, I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you, as always, from Washington, D.C. Yes, it's been an extremely busy day today, coming from the nation's capital all around the country, including some new exclusive footage we promised you from January 6th, and the unbelievable security failures we continue to unmask when we look at that video. We're going to have that, but earlier today, the criminal trial for federal prosecutors' case against former President Donald Trump in the classified documents case is going to be set. It's been set now, May 20th of next year, right in the middle of the primary season. I'm going to bring Amanda in to react to that. Amanda, that's a pretty big revelation.
Yeah, I think for any other, obviously it's not the best timing. I think for any other candidate, it would have a much more detrimental effect, though, because President Trump has already had one term in office. He does these rallies practically back to back to back. We're covering, at this network, practically all of his rallies with people on the ground or people in studio. People know President Trump's policies. I think that, for President Trump, obviously, he loves getting out in America and having these rallies and meeting with Americans. But again, I don't think that it will have as negative of an impact on him as it would your traditional candidate. But I can't wait to come to the swamp in a few days, John. I'm going to be joining you in Washington, D.C. That's right. And then we are going to be heading down to Florida for something fun that we'll be showing next week. But anyway, let's get to the news of the day. In political news, Vivek Ramaswamy has caught up to Florida governor and fellow GOP contender Ron DeSantis for second place, according to a new 2024 primary poll. And what's interesting to me is that his rise in the polls comes at a time when he rejected the notion that he would serve in a Trump administration if the former president was to win next November. Now, meanwhile, over there in your neck of the woods, John RFK Jr., who is challenging President Joe Biden in a bid for the White House, blew the roof off of Congress when he testified before the House Select Subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government. Ironically enough, it wasn't the Republican members who were slinging harmful comments at the longtime Democrat. Rather, it was members of his own party, like Florida Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. From being called a racist to an anti-Semite and much more, it seems to me like his challenge to Biden is really ruffling some feathers over there in the swamp. And in some sad musical news, legendary pop and jazz singer Tony Bennett, who would have turned 97 years old this year, has passed away. He has won 20 Grammy Awards over the course of his life, a Lifetime Achievement Award, and was even credited for saving pop singer Lady Gaga's music career when she was considering quitting. And to round out the top headlines of today and throw it back to you in D.C. to get into the January 6th footage, I want to throw it back to our interview just yesterday with Matt Osborne, who serves as the president of Operation Underground Railroad, the nonprofit organization that Tim Ballard began after quitting his government job in an attempt to save children from sex trafficking and exploitation across the globe. Well, that's because the movie based on his operation called The Sound of Freedom, that has performed very well and has been screened by former President Donald Trump at his golf club in New Jersey, will now also be screened for Congress. The movie's producer Eduardo Verástegui said that he would hope that Democrats and Republicans alike would attend. I don't know about that, John, considering the reaction from the mainstream media, but it would be nice if all of Congress gathered behind this because it is a very, very important issue.
It's an issue that should exceed politics. It should rise above it, and everybody should watch this movie because it's about protecting vulnerable children from some of the most hideous evils we could imagine. Amanda, I'm kind of bummed out today. I am a big Tony Bennett fan. In fact, just this past weekend, I was at a thrift store and I found some old vinyl from the 60s of Tony Bennett and picked a couple of the old records up just to add to my collection. A great guy, and I'll tell you, one of his greatest collaborations, that Duets album he did in his late 80s. He sounded as good as ever, and all those pop stars collaborating with him, country stars. He's going to be sorely missed in music and in America for sure. All right.
You know what's amazing about him? You know, I was thinking about that this morning. Typically with these legendary singers, you can say, oh, well, that was my grandparents' generation or that was my parents' generation. He spans at least 3 generations because my grandparents listened to him, my parents listened to him, and, you know, this newest generation, the collaboration that he did with Lady Gaga gave him a resurgence to his career and a new awareness of him and his legendary status as a singer. And so I don't think you can say that about many performers, that they spanned at least 3 generations.
Yeah, listen, I had a teenage niece that has him on the playlist. Particularly that duets. I mean, with Lady Gaga and so many of the other great artists that he collaborated with. He is a true American treasure. He's going to be greatly missed, I know for certain. All right, something that's not going to be missed any longer is a new security failure captured on tape. And by the way, we've got some great guests that are going to follow up on this today. The chairman of the committee in the House administration, the subcommittee that's investigating the security failures at the Capitol on January 6th. Congressman Barry Loudermilk going to be here, as well as Congressman Thomas Massie, who did a lot of work on what we're about to show you. This is never before seen video footage. It comes from one of the U.S. Capitol cameras that were pointed at the Democratic National Committee, which is about a block away from the U.S. Capitol. And we're going to show you a sequence. It starts with the alleged pipe bomber on the night before January 6th going and planting a bomb near the Democratic National Committee. And when you're done, you're going to see an extraordinary security failure from an agency that we assume doesn't make these type of mistakes. Let's start to roll the tape and I'll walk you through it. All right, this is the night before January 6th. This is the alleged bomber sitting on a park bench outside the DNC and pulling out an explosive device. He's looking around, even at the camera, it looks like, and getting this device out, and he's going to bend down, and right there, he's going to plant it by that bench and that bush. That is about 17 hours before it's discovered, about 16 hours before, and then that sits down, forgot something there, better go check it out. All right. Now I'm going to get up in a second here and get out of Dodge. Now we want to give you the long look. Look at that driveway behind that park bench. That's going to be important to you in a second, okay? But what you see is now that person's sitting on the bench. They're pulling out the package. You can see the long lens, but it's very close to the parking garage structure, somewhere between 8 and 10 yards from that driveway is what we believe. And that's going to become important in a second. But there's that bomber. It's remarkable that with all this camera footage and cell phone technology, we still don't know 900 days later who that person is. And in earlier footage the FBI released, there's a moment where the bomber appears to go on a cell phone. Still, we don't have it. Now, this is what the bomb looked like, sitting right at a bush in plain view. We want you to see it here because I think you'll get a good, strong sense of this was not something you would walk by and miss. Look at that. Kitchen timer, explosive pipe bomb there, sitting right where the bench and the bushes were there. Now, that's pretty easy to detect. In fact, a civilian ultimately found it and brought it to law enforcement's attention. But let's take a look here. This is the next morning. The soon-to-be Vice President, Kamala Harris, pulls in that driveway. Remember, I told you that driveway. There it is. The park benches are to the right where those cars are going by. There's the Secret Service. There's the entourage. That's the soon-to-be Vice President, 14 days away from assuming office, protected by the Secret Service. They're driving her right by that bomb for quite some time. Look, she stays in the building for about an hour. Nobody in the Secret Service detail actually noticed that bomb. They don't really sweep the area. Now, we've been asked by the Secret Service not to show the sweeping procedures, but they went right by the bomb, just so you know. And then they sit there. They're in the car. They're watching it. It's really remarkable. This is what the site looks like today. We went back to the site. Our good correspondent, Nick Ballasy. That's it today. Something's missing. They got rid of those park benches. There's the driveway, but you get a sense of just how close Kamala Harris came to an explosive device. Pretty remarkable stuff. That's what it looks like today. Amanda, I want to bring you in right now. We assume the Secret Service are the best of the best. The last few weeks have been a difficult time for them. They can't solve a basic cocaine caper in the Biden White House, and now we see for the first time they drove by a explosive device with the future vice president. Their sweep didn't catch it, and you saw how obvious it was.
Yeah, well, what sticks out to me about this and everything that occurred on January 6th is that where there was needed high security, there wasn't. And where there wasn't needed security, there was a very high level of it. When you look at this footage and the footage of what it looks like now and Kamala Harris being right there and the sweep happening, I just think, I would never hope to be in the mind of a bomber, but you just look at like what happened, even Boston bomber, any type of bombing, if the detonation is not to happen for many, many hours later, say 17 hours later or something like that, then you would hide it. You wouldn't just have it sitting there. It was very obvious. It was right there by that bench. There are just so many questions I have about all of this. And this is something that we're going to talk about with some of our guests. The fact that the FBI, when it came to finding alleged perpetrators from January 6th, people who breached the barrier at the Capitol, they were tweeting out pictures of these people, tweeting out pictures of grandma, going to, the ends of the earth to try to find these folks. But then when it came to this, they just seemed, they did post a YouTube video a few years ago with the caption, "Help us find this person." Yeah. But this person, as people can see in the video, had on a hood and a mask. So that's going to be pretty hard. But something that I know that you plan on bringing up with our guests, the fact that the person who found it, they didn't have many questions for that person.
They let him go. They let him go.
Yeah.
The Secret Service gets alerted. They're sitting in their car. We believe they're eating lunch or talking. And a civilian comes up and alerts them to it. And they don't detain the civilian. They don't even take their name. So off the civilian runs. But here's a more amazing thing about this. And let's talk about the explosive. Steve D'Antonio, who was the assistant director of the FBI for the Washington field office, who ran this investigation, said it had live explosives, but the timer did not trigger it. So it looks like it was a diversionary tactic, but it had very real payload that could have injured people had it gone off. When they went to go get the cell phone data to find that bomber, remarkably, the telephone companies say something happened to the data. It got corrupted, so we can't help you track that cell phone. There are so many questions about what happened on these two episodes. The FBI solves all crimes like this. I mean, when they have video footage that good like you saw, they solve it. They've not been able to solve it, and a lot of mysterious things going on. We're going to bring up all of that with our next guest, Congressman Barry Loudermilk. I spent some time privately with him over the last couple of days. We're going to roll that, and then Amanda and I are going to spend also time with Congressman Massie, Thomas Massie, who really drilled into this over the last two hearings with the FBI, and I think brought out more important facts than anyone else about the absurdity of what you see there. Amanda, I want to give you the last word on this. So we've seen a lot of security failures on videotape. Nancy Pelosi taking her daughter, filming through what's supposed to be a crisis, doors unlocked and people coming in, handcuffs left on the ground for the bad guys to use. What's your thought?
I would like to say that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we are going to have full sunlight on all of this. But then again, you've still got people in the swamp who are trying to suppress information about JFK's assassination. So we're going to keep digging and we're going to keep shedding light, and we're going to be doing it until all is found out. That's all I know.
Yeah, you're exactly right. All right, folks, we're going to take that quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to play my sit-down interview with Congressman Barry Loudermilk, the man leading the January 6th security investigation, right after this. Welcome back, folks. We just showed you that extraordinary video footage. I know it's still absorbing. The Secret Service bringing the future vice president just 14 days from office to the DNC, right where a pipe bomb had been planted the night before. The sweep clearly didn't catch that security risk there. We're going to be joined now by the chairman of the House Administration Oversight Subcommittee, who's been leading the efforts to unmask all of the security intelligence failures that the January 6th Democrat committee swept under the rug the last couple of years. Joining us right now, Congressman Barry Loudermilk from the great state of Georgia, the chairman of that committee. Mr. Chairman, good to have you back on.
John, it's always a pleasure to be with you, and you're doing some incredible work.
Well,
so we appreciate it.
We're trying to keep up with your committee's investigation. A lot of explosive revelations. A great hearing yesterday. We'll get to that in a second. I want to just ask you, you've seen this video footage too. Right. You and Congressman Massie and others have been aware of this very significant failure by the Secret Service. Your take on what we saw and what can be done maybe to fix the mentality that led to this oversight.
Yeah, it's incredible because I'm still trying to make sense out of what we're seeing. First of all, we know that there was actionable intelligence that there was going to be an attack on the Capitol. It seems like most every three-letter agency knew about it, but the chief of police didn't because of the intelligence failure that happened within Capitol Police. That also leads us to believe that the Secret Service knew about it. We knew that people in the White House knew about the intelligence. So why did they not catch a pipe bomb? And when you look at the video and you see the still pictures from the FBI, that pipe bomb was placed to be found. It wasn't placed to be in an area to do damage. You would put it inside the bush, all the way under the bush. This thing was left so it would be found. How in the world was it not found before they brought the future vice president into the Democrat club there? And, was there not a sweep done at all? That's my question. And especially, normally you would do a sweep anyhow. But if you had the intelligence, don't you think you would have doubled your efforts? And so there's just so many questions unanswered. And then, of course, you got the FBI. And as you mentioned, Thomas Massie is running down that trail for us. We are working together. And that's the nice thing about this investigation. We're working with the Oversight Committee. We're working with Jim Jordan and Judiciary and the Weaponization Committee. And so we it kind of expands our efforts and also gets people working in certain directions. But there is so many unanswered questions that we have that these things should have been looked into by the Select Committee on January 6th. But as we know now, they had a predetermined narrative and it just didn't fit of what they wanted to, where they wanted to place the blame on all this.
Yeah, and I think, we grew out of the 9/11 era and we really hardened our defenses after 9/11, knowing that the enemy across the ocean was determined to strike us. 22 years later, it seems like we've gotten a little soft. You see all these different things. The other day we had police equipment dropping on the ground. A few weeks before that, you have the door being unlocked and police unaware that they triggered the unlocking system. Is there a mindset that maybe has softened over the years as we move further and further away from that extraordinarily bad day of 9/11?
I think it has, but there's also the politicization, the aspect that happens here.
Good point.
And this is a good lead into the other discussion about the Inspector General. We've got a situation here where the Inspector General of the Capitol Police is hired and fired by the Capitol Police Board. Right. So you work for the people you're investigating. That's unheard of. It is not effective. And so we have that issue. In our investigation, we're finding out the term optics comes up quite often. So, Chief Sund, he put his civil defense units, the units that are the riot police, basically.
Yeah, the civil disturbance units, right.
Yes, civil disturbance units in place, ready to go. But somebody in leadership didn't like the optics of them having riot gear. So they were told they had to leave their riot gear in buses that were blocks away. I mean, this stuff makes no sense whatsoever. But even on the pipe bomb aspect, we also have video to where someone walks up to the Secret Service who are sitting outside while the future vice president-elect is inside the building and tells them about the pipe bomb. Then that person just walks off. Would you not think that you would detain that person there to find out more information about somebody who just walks up and says, hey, there's a pipe bomb over here? That makes no sense. They don't even know who that person is. So there's just so many failures that, and I'm not confident that we've overcome these yet. We need significant reforms. We need to get back. I mean, we've even seen it in our military. The wokeism has gone into our military where it's more important to feel good than it is to be lethal. And so there's a lot of work that has to be done. These security forces are here to protect, not project a political ideology.
Yeah, such an important mindset. We have to switch back to the way it used to be. So you had this extraordinary hearing yesterday with the Capitol Police Inspector General, and you learn a lot of different things over the course of the hours. One of them is that of all the investigative reports this agency has done, only 2 or 3 are ever made public. It's as though there's no antiseptic of light to be had here. Does that contribute to the inability of the Capitol Police to fix itself?
It does. When you've got an inspector general, as I said earlier, who works for the people they're inspecting, there is a cordial working relationship there. And I think what we uncovered is not something totally nefarious, but it's grounded in the makeup of the inspector general's office. It should never be that they work for the people you're investigating. You have to be independent. And so we uncovered that, there were these hundreds of recommendations that were made by the previous inspector general, but they're being checked off in the spirit of the recommendation. That was very concerning to me. Yeah. And they're just checking, we took care of reforming this. Well, we didn't reform it exactly the way they said. We just maybe took the easy route out, but we're checking it off. So that was a big revelation. And some of that came from, information that we're getting from whistleblowers, is that they're not really making reforms, that they're checking it off. Just to make it look like they're doing something significant. So, and we do know from the previous inspector general that right after January 6th, we had several Capitol Police whistleblowers go to that inspector general and tell them of things that they knew that was happening. Somehow the Capitol Police finds out who those people are and they fire them. Wow. So there was actually no confidentiality, as the law requires, within the Inspector General's office. Somebody in the Inspector General's office went back to Capitol Police and said, hey, these people are coming over and reporting what's going on. So one of the first questions I asked this of the Chief of Police and of the Inspector General. 1, will you make every person that works for you available for us to question? The answer was yes. And 2, will you ensure to me that they will be protected and there'll be no retaliation? And both have told me yes. So hopefully they're going to hold to that word, and we'll be able to not only get some answers, but fix a problem.
Yeah, and that's all you're trying to do, right? You're not trying to score political points like the last committee. You're just trying to get things fixed so we're safer. A lot of people have told me the Capitol's no more safer today than it was on January 5th because of the failure to get on top of this stuff until you started. Do you feel like there's a lot of room to grow, that maybe we didn't learn a lot from January 6th to this point?
Yeah, there is. And it's because of the select committee did not do part of what their tasking was. And they, as I've mentioned before, they had a blue team, a team that this is what they were supposed to do. But the problem that we're seeing they ran into, 1, we have no documents from the blue team, so it's as if they didn't do anything. And I thought maybe they found something they weren't supposed to, and those documents just disappeared, as we know other documents have that we're still trying to run down. But now as I look at it, if you're going to investigate the Capitol Police and a security failure, you also have to investigate those who have oversight, which would be the Committee on House Administration, as well as the Speaker's office. Well, the Speaker put together this select committee, so there's a conflict of interest there. The chairman of House Administration, Zoe Lofgren, was part of the select committee on January 6th. So would she actively investigate herself? So I'm of opinion right now, maybe the blue team never did anything as far as investigating the security failures of the Capitol. So the short answer is people here do not feel safe, and that this could not happen again. They feel like there has not been a significant enough reforms. And I can tell you that a lot of the officers that we speak with, they feel the same way. There's still a lot of work to do.
Well, the good news is someone is finally on the case. That is you, sir. Some really amazing stuff yesterday. And a big hearing next week in the Senate. We'll be covering that, or jointly with the Senate next week. We'll be covering that. We'll be covering that as well. Sir, great honor to have you on the show today. Thanks for what you're doing to make our U.S. Capitol a lot more safe.
My pleasure, John. Anytime.
Thank you, sir. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back after these messages.
Let's make them wonder. Let's squeeze them for a change instead of them constantly squeezing us. And then, finally, we rally around President Trump. We surround him with support.
Welcome back, everybody. Our next guest tonight is on top of it all in the D.C. swamp, from wasteful government spending to sounding the alarm when big government encroaches on the personal lives of American citizens practically daily. And now he's once again asking all the right questions, from the RFK Jr. hearing yesterday to the ongoing investigations, or lack thereof, by law enforcement from January 6th. He is Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie, and he joins us now. Congressman, welcome to the show, sir. Good to have you.
Great to be on with you, Amanda.
Sir, there are a number of members of Congress who have been working very diligently to peel back the layers of the onion with respect to what exactly transpired on January 6th, who was involved, and then, of course, this issue of the pipe bombs left at the RNC and the DNC. And you released a video on Twitter the other day. We have aired it to our audience. What do you think is important about this footage of the pipe bomb being left at the DNC and all of the elements surrounding it?
Well, you know, we've done a lot of digging here. We've spent over 100 hours watching the videotape on this particular topic. And then Jim Jordan and I had a transcribed interview with the FBI director that was in charge of the Washington, D.C. field office that was supposed to be doing this investigation. And I asked him, having the knowledge of the video that I had watched, I asked him, do you know who found the second pipe bomb at the DNC? And he said he didn't know if they knew. yet he's over the people who are doing the investigation, and it's 900 days later. And I said, would that person be a witness, the person who found that pipe bomb at just the right time? And he said, that's investigation 101. Of course we'd want to talk to that person. So then when we had Christopher Wray in front of us just the other week in our Judiciary Committee, I asked the FBI director, do you know who found the second pipe bomb? Do you have any leads there? Oh, by the way, Amanda, Jim Jordan and I also learned in that interview with the deputy director who was in charge of the Washington, D.C. field office, that the phone companies had corrupted data, that they weren't able to use phone data to find out who the suspect was that they think that may have planted it on January 5th. So it's like the Keystone Cops, or they're not trying. I don't know what's going on here.
Keystone Cops is a word that's coming up a lot more, Congressman.
Yeah.
You're right.
Sorry.
And you've done such great work on this. There's a moment where the Secret Service actually does engage the person, and then they don't detain that person, right? There's a crucial witness, and that person was allowed to walk off, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the FBI could tell us about this person, but in the hearing, when I asked Christopher Wray, he used that phrase that I'm just frankly sick of. He said, well, it's longstanding FBI policy not to comment on ongoing investigations. I had to remind him that we fund the FBI. We created the FBI. Congress did. So you need to answer our questions. So who was that person that randomly walked up to, walked past the DNC, seemed concerned, had a backpack, talked to one police car, went to the other side of the police car, went to Kamala Harris's Secret Service detail, talked to that police car, and then it's like they're sort of in there for, 30 seconds, a minute and a half, eating their lunch or something, and then they decide to meander out and look around, and lo and behold, there's the pipe bomb. How did somebody find it after it had been sitting there for 17 hours out in the open at just the right time?
Yeah, important question.
Congressman, within the context of this conversation we've all been having about the weaponization of the federal government, a two-tiered system of justice, there has been a very stark dichotomy between the fervor that the FBI had and has as far as seeking out what actually happened, investigating January 6th activity on Capitol Hill, versus finding out more information and investigating this pipe bomb issue. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's also, look at the cocaine issue in the White House, right? There definitely is a double standard here. I see this double standard in the hearings that we have. If we ask a question, on the Republican side, you get the longstanding policy of the FBI not to answer. And then on the Democrat side, they always answer their questions. So there is a double standard when Congress is investigating and when the FBI responds to us. But then in their own investigations, they'll go to the edge of the earth to find a grandmother who, may have been walking in front of the Capitol, and then on January 6th. By the way, this is the other thing we found out from the FBI director. He said it happens all the time. When I asked him, did you get private purchase data like gun records on Americans from Bank of America and other financial institutions without a warrant, without a subpoena? And he said, yes, we did, and it happens all the time. What the heck? What about the Fourth Amendment? I thought you had to have, probable cause or at least reasonable suspicion, but I guess not anymore. So we need to change the laws, frankly. That's the lever that we have in the Judiciary Committee. And I think we've got the inertia to do it from these hearings.
Yeah, important stuff. I want to ask a little bit about the security mindset. We learned a lot before 9/11. We hardened our defenses after terrorism. But over the last few weeks, when you look at the video footage that Speaker McCarthy has allowed us and you and others to go through, you see cops unlocking a door and letting people flow in, not even realizing they had triggered the lock. You see them dropping handcuffs on the ground that ends up being used against them. You see the Secret Service taking the future vice president 14 days from taking office right past the bomb. Their sweep doesn't see something that a civilian saw. Has the security mindset of these agencies gotten soft again in the post 9/11 era?
I don't know what it is, but back to that location at the DNC, they did drive right by there. And after they drove right by it without sweeping that bench area, they parked there. And it looks like they may have eaten their lunch. They spent over an hour just 30 feet from that, what's called a pipe bomb, without acknowledging it until a passerby came. So I don't know. Maybe they have gotten lax. But again, it's that double standard. I see on your screen there the pipe bomb. Yeah. By the way, I asked the FBI assistant director who was in charge of the Washington, D.C. field office, how can a pipe bomb with a 1-hour kitchen timer go off 17 hours later? And he said it can't. And so obviously those weren't operable pipe bombs that were planted the night before, either. And I do believe their suspicion that they were planted the night before, but if they were planted the night before, they couldn't go off the next day if they have a 1-hour timer on them. Something doesn't add up here.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I think you're right. That 17 hours is a big question. It also kind of looks like a handheld shower head, and I don't know how people miss that. But well, Congressman Thomas Massie, you don't miss anything.
Yeah, no, it looks like a sprinkler to me. Like, so, if you saw that in a bush there, so that's why I think we need to talk to that person who found the second pipe bomb. Let's find them and
yes, sir.
That's the right question, no doubt.
Absolutely. Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie, we appreciate your time tonight, sir, and we know that you are always digging, and we look forward to having you back on again in the future to talk about what else you found. Thank you, sir. All right, everybody, don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we have a current Secretary of State who has done a stellar job in his position, and he's now running for U.S. Senate.
Welcome back, America. One of the marquee races in 2024, beyond the presidential race, will be the Senate race in the state of Ohio. It's currently in Democratic hands. It's a Republican state. There's a lot of excitement in the Republican circles that this is a seat that can be flipped in the next year. And we have the person who just threw his ring into the hat for the Republican nomination joining us right now. He's the Secretary of State of the great state of Ohio right now. He has led on issues like election integrity, and now he is going to take on Sherrod Brown in the Senate race. Joining us right now, Secretary of State Frank Larose from the great state of Ohio. Mr. Secretary, good to have you on, sir.
Good to be on, John. And yeah, this is the must-win seat. We're going to take back the Senate majority, but it starts with defeating a dangerous, out-of-touch liberal named Sherrod Brown, who somehow represents Midwestern Ohio, even though he's one of the most liberal members of the Senate.
It really is amazing that he has been able to survive as long in what is really a common sense Midwest state. He's very liberal. You've gotten right out of the box helping Ohioans understand this is not a moderate blue dog Democrat, haven't you?
No, sir. He has for years conducted what I call Sherrod's charade. He's convinced Ohioans that he's some kind of a moderate Democrat. He's not. He's on the far left fringe of his party. In fact, even just a few months ago, when asked about the crisis occurring at the U.S.-Mexican border, he said, "Oh, no, I don't think people really care about that." Well, let me tell you, Senator, the drugs and the crime that are pouring across that border are killing our fellow Ohioans. We need to care about it. For me, this isn't a photo op or a field trip to the border that some politicians do. I actually served down there as part of a counter-narcotics task force. I know exactly what's at stake. We can secure the southern border of this country if we have the courage to lead on it, and that's exactly what I'll do in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, very important.
I love that. Yeah, very important. I wanted to ask you, for decades, people have said, as Ohio goes, so goes the country. Now they're saying it about a half a dozen other states, too. But I think that it's Ohio. I think that's the only one. But as Ohio goes, I think it's important to highlight what Ohio has done as far as election integrity. It is one of the few swing states in America that I think that election integrity is on the up and up. And it is very secure. Can you talk to us about that and what it looks like for 2024 if it is still as secure as we think it is?
Well, this has been my mission as Ohio's chief elections officer, and there's a reason why President Trump only endorsed one Secretary of State in the whole country last year, and that was me. He knows that we've been working to keep our elections honest. We passed mandatory photo ID. The left is currently suing me to try to get rid of that, but we're fighting them and we're going to win. We remove dead people from the voter rolls on a monthly basis. We make sure that only citizens can be registered to vote, and we audit every election where we count the hard copy, dead tree, wet ink piece of paper and compare it to that election night electronic result to make sure there's fidelity there. We've had an over 99.9% accuracy rate during my time as Secretary of State, and that's going to continue because Ohioans know that it's both easy to vote and hard to cheat here in the Buckeye State.
Yeah, that's for sure. Sir, you served your country as a special operator. I think foreign policy is going to be a much bigger issue in 2024 elections than in prior elections. Obviously, the economy, another one. China, Afghanistan, the Democrats have a lot of difficult things to answer for. The insecurity at the border that you just mentioned. Tell us a little bit about where Sherrod Brown has been with the Biden administration on its foreign policy.
Well, asleep at the switch, unfortunately, and it's made our country more dangerous. When I'm successful, I'll be the first Green Beret in U.S. Senate history, and as the world becomes more and more dangerous, I think that special operations experience is going to be important. I mean, first of all, I won't back down to China or anyone else. This administration has taken its eye off the ball as it relates to China's work to lock up control of critical minerals. You can't build electronic components at this point unless you're willing to do business with the Chinese Communist Party because they control all of these mines in Africa that are needed to build those components. Unfortunately, China's building the world's most sophisticated Navy, and this administration thinks that hiring a drag queen to be a Navy recruiter is a good idea. China's laughing at us, and that's going to end when we take back the Senate majority and start working on making sure that we're focused on our strategic aims here and that we're defending this country.
Yeah, important.
Sir, you brought up the drag issue, and of course that leads us to talk about trans and the LGBTQ plus IA, whatever. And that is something that, of course, goes hand in hand with what conservatives are trying to do, folks like you, as far as parental rights, making sure that parents have access to what their children are being taught in the classroom. This has become, it has become a nationwide issue. I think it was a big factor in last year's midterms, and it will be next year. What are you talking about with respect to that on the campaign trail?
Well, Amanda, I'm the only parent of young children in this race. Lauren and I are raising 3 young daughters, and so I'm a father. But guess what? I'm also a fighter, and Lauren and I refuse to co-parent with the government. There are bureaucrats at the local, state, and federal level who think it's okay to step between parents and their children. That has to end. We're going to teach our children our values. I know that's what Ohioans want to do, and we're not going to share that responsibility with anyone else. To see the kind of indoctrination that's happening in our schools across this country is absolutely shameful, and a lot of it starts from the U.S. Department of Education that unfortunately is not really focused on educating children. It's more focused on employing adults and massive bureaucracies. That needs to end. We're going to take back public education. It starts with things like school choice and restoring parental rights.
Yeah, it's going to be a big issue. Ever since Glenn Youngkin's victory, parents are more activated than I've seen in politics in a very long time. It's really remarkable. I want to talk a little bit about early voting. Over the last 6 years, Democrats have built a machine to get low propensity voters out to vote early if they're not going to show up on Election Day. Republicans are now mounting, I think, a very serious and impressive thing nationwide. How important is it for Republicans to do lawfully, but to take advantage and maybe get people to the poll voting who in the past years might have not have gone to the polls?
So in Ohio, we have a way of doing early voting that's trustworthy. We have in-person early voting at our county boards of elections for 4 weeks. We've got, of course, absentee voting, but not this foolish system that some states have where they mail out ballots to people that don't ask for them and don't maintain the accuracy of their voter rolls. In Ohio, once you prove your identity, yes, we'll mail you an absentee ballot. You can track it on our website to make sure it arrives at your house on time, and then you can mail it back and track it back to the Board of Elections to make sure it arrives there. And so Ohioans know they can trust all 3 of our forms of voting, but here's where we need to beat the other side at their own game. They've taken great advantage of early and absentee voting. We know that in football, you can score points 3 ways. You can score points by running, passing, or kicking. And in politics, we can score votes 3 ways with early voting, absentee voting, and in-person Election Day voting. As Republicans, we can't give up on 2 of those methods for scoring votes. We have an issue right now on the ballot in Ohio to protect our state constitution from radical out-of-state special interests. And I'm out on the campaign trail every day talking about Ohioans voting yes on issue 1, taking advantage of the trustworthy process early and absentee voting we have.
Sir, we all around this country, people say you created the right model in Ohio for election integrity. I know they're excited to watch your Senate race now. Thanks for joining us. We're going to keep a close eye on that. Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to wrap up for the day. A lot to cover. We'll have all of that right after these messages.
Welcome back for the last time this evening and the last time this week. It is Friday. Now, John, I want to hit on something that you said at the top of the show regarding Tony Bennett. I have to admit, I didn't initially take you as a vinyl guy. However, when I think about it, I know that you value good reporting, you value good information. So why wouldn't you value good music on a good form?
Amanda, my first car had an 8-track tape in it. I'm a little old. Vinyl was my CDs.
I remember when I was in middle school, we had a scavenger hunt at my church. And one of the items on the scavenger hunt list was an 8-track of Three Dog Night, Two Dog Night, Four Dog Night.
Three Dog Night, yeah.
Something. I will never forget it, though, because when I saw 8-track, I'd had absolutely no idea what that was. I don't think that you came around when CDs were.
No, I was pre-CDs. I had cassettes and vinyl. That's all I had. Yeah, 60s and 70s.
That's
cassettes
amazing.
and vinyl. And 8-tracks. 8-tracks were short-lived, but they were so cool. Yeah, listen, and you know what's amazing? Through all that technological change from the vinyl, the 33s and the vinyls, and then all the way up through tapes, then through CDs, and then through Apple iTunes, Tony Bennett's career expanded that entire time. He was able to exceed 3 or 4 generations, covering them with incredible music. And there's so few people. Johnny Cash, I think, had that capability in country music. There are just people who can have 5 or 6 years of relevance. It's such a gift when we have such an. It's going to be a big loss to America today. And I hope he's in a better place with our good Lord now.
Yeah, amen. And I will just say, I'll get on my soapbox for a moment because you brought up Apple iTunes. For any of you youngsters out there who think that it's wonderful and you think that the notion of owning nothing and being happy is actually true, according to the World Economic Forum, iTunes is a perfect example because you don't own it. You're just basically renting it via Apple's streaming service. And then when you get in the sky on an airplane and it's not available via streaming, oh, whoops, you're not able to listen to your music. So that's just a tiny little microcosm example of how owning nothing and being happy is a complete and total lie. Okay, let's move on from the cultural stuff because there's a lot to hit. I want to start with the most recent interview with Frank Larose. He is incredibly impressive. And, you know, he brought up the fact that he was the only Secretary of State that President Trump endorsed. But we didn't talk about this in the interview with him, but in his video announcing his run, he's actually running. He's from Akron, Ohio. He is an Ohio man. He loves the state, and he is now seeking that U.S. Senate seat. But what's amazing to me is that it made me think of, John, I don't know if you saw this headline the last few weeks, equating exercise and physical fitness to white privilege. Yeah. And it just made me think, him running in this video made me think about that. And also, the farcical nature of what has become the leftist agenda and their platform, trying to equate physical fitness and health to, right-wing, white racism type aspects. I think that that's the type of stuff that between now and then, next year's election, a lot of people are going to, look at Misha, what's her name? Misha Miser out of Georgia. I think that's her name. The Democrat state representative who switched to the Republican Party because so much of the leftist platform has become these ridiculous headlines of physical fitness is white privilege.
Yeah, listen, he's probably a progressive liberal's absolute nightmare. He's a military guy, a special operator, a parents' rights advocate, a physical enthusiast, physical fitness enthusiast, and a champion of liberty. He's probably going to scare the liberals out of that state pretty quickly. It's going to be very interesting to watch that race, but great moment. I want to just finish up.
Misha Maynard, that's her name.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Sorry, I had to correct myself.
I want to finish up with something that I think is, when we step back at what we've been able to lay out in this show the last few weeks, the level of security failures at the Capitol Police, at the Secret Service, not keeping the person behind, not noticing the bomb, unlocking the door, letting 300 people come in uncontested, letting their handcuffs and gear get stolen and used against them. There is a very big mission ahead for people like Barry Loudermilk and Thomas Massie and other lawmakers to try to run against the fake narrative and get these things fixed. Because right now, everybody tells me the Capitol's no more safer than it was on January 5th. That's an unacceptable situation for most Americans, I think. Yeah, and the fact that the vice president-elect was right there on the ground near this explosive device. It's incredible to see. And for Americans who look at this situation, like you said, you've got Thomas Massie, Barry Loudermilk, these folks that are really digging. But Democrats at this point
just don't really seem to care about that fact that you just stated, the terrifying notion that places like the U.S. Capitol, in this instance specifically the U.S. Capitol, are no safer. And, that affects every aspect of law enforcement. And we keep bringing up this phrase, Keystone Cops, but with respect to the U.S. Secret Service and the nation's premier law enforcement, the FBI, and time after again, it's just fumble after fumble. Yeah, no, you're right. It is. A lot to answer for, a lot to fix, but that's what hopefully the elected leaders of Washington will now get it done. We'll see. Yeah, I know that folks like Thomas Massie and Barry Loudermilk are not going to let this go, so I'm very grateful for that. All right, everybody, that's where we're going to have to leave it. John and I will be back on Monday night together in studio with more breaking news and major headlines. I'm going to go hop on a plane, and I'll see you guys in the swamp. Until then, we hope you have a safe and happy weekend. God bless you. God bless this great nation. Good night.